Have you ever wondered why your brain picks 2 a.m. to replay that embarrassing moment from 5 years ago? Why, no matter how hard you try to think about something else, it just keeps coming back? Here's what most people miss. Your brain isn't broken. It's actually doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is, it's running a loop, and every time you replay that moment, you're teaching it to do it again tomorrow night. So today, we're breaking down why this happens and how to stop it. Overthinking isn't a personality trait. It's a brain pattern, and every time you do it, you're making it stronger. Neuroscientists have a name for the network in your brain responsible for this. And once you understand how it works, you can actually interrupt it. In the next 15 minutes, I'll show you exactly what's happening inside your head at 2 a.m., why telling yourself to just stop thinking has never worked, and the one shift that breaks the loop. Chapter 1: The 2 a.m. Mind. You know the feeling. It's 2 a.m., you're exhausted. You've been trying to sleep for an hour, but your brain is wide awake, replaying that conversation you had 3 days ago. What you said, what they said, what you should have said. You tell yourself, this doesn't matter, let it go. And for a moment, it works. Your mind goes quiet. Then, 20 seconds later, it's back. The same moment, the same dialogue, playing on repeat like a song you can't turn off. Or maybe it's not a conversation. Maybe it's a decision you made 6 months ago, a project you messed up, something you posted online that got 2 likes. It doesn't even have to be a big thing. In fact, the smaller and more irrelevant it is, the more maddening it becomes. Because part of you knows, logically, rationally, that thinking about it again won't change anything. You've already thought it through 100 times. There's nothing new to discover. And yet, your brain refuses to clock out. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Overthinking feels like thinking. It isn't. It's the opposite of thinking. Real thinking moves you forward. It solves problems. It makes decisions. It creates clarity. Overthinking loops. It replays the same input over and over. It drains you without producing anything useful. And here's what nobody tells you. Every time you run that loop, you're not just having a bad night. You're rewiring the neural pathways that will make you do it again tomorrow. To understand why, you have to meet a network in your brain called the default mode network. Chapter 2: Meet the default mode network. In 2001, a neuroscientist named Marcus Raichle made a discovery that changed how we understand the brain. He was studying brain activity during rest. What happens when you're not focused on any task? And he found something strange. When people weren't doing anything specific, a particular network of brain regions lit up. He called it the default mode network, the DMN. The DMN includes 3 main areas. The medial prefrontal cortex, involved in self-referential thinking. The posterior cingulate cortex, memory and internal focus. The hippocampus, connecting memories to emotions. This is the network that turns on when your mind wanders, when you daydream, when you imagine the future or replay the past. In a healthy brain, the DMN is creative. It's where insights emerge, where you connect ideas that seemed unrelated, where you process experiences and make sense of your life. But here's the problem. In people who struggle with overthinking, the DMN doesn't behave normally. Studies using brain imaging show that chronic overthinkers have a hyperactive default mode network. It doesn't just turn on during rest. It stays on, even when they're trying to focus on something else. It hijacks attention. It pulls you out of the present moment and throws you into loops of rumination. And the more you engage with those loops, the stronger the network becomes. Think of it like this. Your brain has different networks for different jobs. There's a network for focus and attention, your prefrontal cortex, your executive control center. And there's the DMN, your internal narrator, your meaning maker, your storyteller. In most people, these 2 networks balance each other. When one is active, the other quiets down. But in overthinkers, that balance breaks. The DMN refuses to turn off. It runs in the background constantly, narrating, analyzing, second-guessing. And that's when overthinking stops being an occasional habit and becomes a default state. Chapter 3: Why just stop thinking doesn't work. So if overthinking is just a brain network running too hard, why can't you just turn it off? Why doesn't willpower work? Because the brain doesn't respond to suppression, it responds to the opposite. There's a famous psychology experiment from 1987. A researcher named Daniel Wegner asked participants to do something simple. For the next 5 minutes, don't think about a white bear. Just don't think about it. If it pops into your mind, push it away and think about something else. What happened? The participants couldn't stop thinking about the white bear. The harder they tried not to think about it, the more they thought about it. Every time they suppressed the thought, it bounced back stronger. The harder they tried, the more dominant it became. Wegner called this the ironic process theory. When you try to suppress a thought, your brain splits into two jobs. One part tries to avoid the thought. The other part monitors whether you're succeeding, which means it has to keep checking for the thought. And guess which part wins? The monitor. Because to check if you're not thinking about something, you have to think about it. This is why telling yourself stop overthinking is overthinking. Every time you notice you're doing it and try to force yourself to stop, you're activating the exact network you're trying to quiet. You're feeding the loop. It's like trying to fall asleep by thinking really hard about falling asleep. The effort itself keeps you awake. Or imagine holding a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more force it pushes back with. The moment you relax, it explodes to the surface. That's what happens with suppressed thoughts. They don't disappear, they rebound, often stronger than before. So if you can't suppress the thought, what do? You redirect it. You don't delete a thought. You outvote it. But to understand how, you need to see what's actually happening in your brain during the overthinking loop. Chapter 4: The Rumination Loop. Here's the mechanism. Let's say something triggers you. A memory, a comment someone made, a notification you saw online. And from that moment on, a specific 4-stage sequence unfolds in your brain that most people never realize is happening. Stage 1. The trigger. Your brain perceives a threat, not a physical threat, but a social or emotional one. Something that feels uncertain, unresolved, or unsafe. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires. It releases cortisol, the stress hormone. But here's where it gets interesting. That cortisol isn't supposed to stay high forever. It's designed to spike, help you react to the threat, and then drop back down once the danger passes. Stage 2. Prefrontal cortex goes offline. When cortisol floods your system, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, planning, and decision-making, starts to shut down. This is a survival mechanism. In a real emergency, you don't need to analyze options, you need to act fast. You need to run, you need to hide. You don't have time to think through 10 different scenarios. But in the case of overthinking, there's no real emergency. There's just a thought, no predator, no immediate danger, just your mind replaying something that happened 3 days ago. And yet, your amygdala doesn't know the difference. Your cortisol is still flowing, your prefrontal cortex is still offline, and that's when something critical happens. Stage 3. The DMN takes over. With your prefrontal cortex offline, the default mode network steps in. And what does it do? It replays the moment. It analyzes it. It asks, what did that mean? What could I have done differently? What will happen next? This is where the real problem begins, because each time the DMN replays that moment, it creates a feeling, a sense of shame, regret, or worry. And that feeling triggers the amygdala again. It's another threat signal, so cortisol releases again. Stage 4. The loop reinforces itself. Here's the devastating part. The act of replaying the thought triggers the amygdala again, which releases more cortisol, which keeps the prefrontal cortex offline, which keeps the DMN in control. And the loop continues, over and over, sometimes for hours. 2 a.m. becomes 3 a.m., becomes 4 a.m., and you're still lying there, still caught in the same cycle. And here's what makes it worse. Every time you run this loop, you're strengthening it. There's a principle in neuroscience. Neurons that fire together, wire together. It's called Hebbian learning. It means that the more often 2 neurons fire at the same time, the stronger the connection between them becomes. The more you replay a thought pattern, the more automatic it becomes. By the 5th repetition, it doesn't feel hard anymore. By the 10th, it feels automatic. By the 100th, your brain doesn't even question it. Tonight's overthinking is tomorrow night's template. Your brain is literally building the highway it will use next time. A single repetition leaves a trace. 10 repetitions create a path. 100 repetitions become a superhighway. And the more you travel that highway, the easier it becomes to travel it again. This is why overthinking gets worse over time if you don't interrupt it. It's not a habit you're choosing. It's a neurological groove you're carving deeper every single time. Each night you spend awake at 2 a.m. replaying the same thought, you're not just having a bad night. You're rewiring your brain to make that pattern stronger and more automatic for the next time. Chapter 5. Thinking versus overthinking. So how do you know if you're thinking productively or just overthinking? Here's the diagnostic. Thinking moves toward a decision or action. Overthinking loops on the same input without progress. Thinking uses your prefrontal cortex. Logic, planning, problem solving. Overthinking uses your default mode network. Rumination, self-focus, emotional replay. Thinking fuels you. Overthinking drains you. Here's a simple test. If you've been thinking about the same thing for more than 20 minutes and you haven't reached a decision, written anything down, or taken action, you're not thinking. You're ruminating. Productive thinking has an endpoint. It produces clarity, a plan, or at minimum, acceptance. Overthinking has no endpoint. It's circular. It asks the same questions over and over, never satisfied with the answers. And the worst part? Overthinking disguises itself as productivity. It feels like you're solving something. Like if you just analyze it one more time, you'll figure it out. But you won't. Because the problem isn't lack of analysis. The problem is the loop itself. So the question becomes, how do you interrupt it?
Chapter 6. The 3 shifts that actually work.
Here are 3 strategies backed by neuroscience research. They don't fight the overthinking, they redirect it. Shift 1. Affect labeling. Name it to tame it. Research by UCLA neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman found something remarkable. When you put your feelings into words, even simple words like, I feel anxious, it reduces activity in the amygdala. The act of labeling the emotion engages your prefrontal cortex, which calms the emotional response. So the next time you're caught in an overthinking loop, don't fight it. Name it. Say out loud or write down, I'm ruminating about the meeting. I'm replaying the argument. I'm worrying about what they think of me. That's it. No judgment, no solution. Just name it. This simple act interrupts the loop. Shift 2. Physical grounding. Pull yourself into the present. The DMN thrives when you're disconnected from your body. The fastest way to shut it down is to engage your senses. Try the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Or use cold water. Splash it on your face, hold an ice cube, take a cold shower. Cold activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which signals safety to your brain. The DMN can't run when your body is being directly sensed. Shift 3. The worry window. Schedule your overthinking. This one sounds absurd, but it works. It's called stimulus control therapy, and it's used in clinical settings for chronic worriers. Here's how it works. Set aside 15 minutes a day, same time, same place to overthink on purpose. During that window, you have full permission to ruminate. Replay every thought. But outside that window, when an overthinking thought shows up, you tell yourself, not now. I'll think about this during my worry window. What this does, it externalizes the overthinking. It turns it from an uncontrollable urge into a scheduled appointment. And over time, your brain learns that overthinking has a time and place, which means it doesn't need to hijack your 2 a.m. thoughts anymore. These 3 shifts work because they don't suppress, they redirect. They give your brain something else to do. And that's the key. You can't win a fight against your default mode network, but you can give it a different job. Chapter 7. The quiet ending. So the next time you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. and your mind refuses to clock out, remember, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're not doomed to live like this forever. You're running a loop, and loops can be interrupted. Your brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do. The good news? You can train it differently. Pause, breathe, Reset. You have the power to change this. If this helped you see your mind a little differently, the next video breaks down why your brain gets addicted to stress and how to break that pattern too.